Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Hawkeye, starring Jeremy Renner, Haley Steinfeld, Florence Pugh, Vincent D'Onofrio, Tony Dalton, Alakwa Cox, Linda Cardellini, and Vera Farmiga, directed by Bertie, and Rhys Thomas. Now, before I get into this, I watched this twice for this, or actually three times for this review now I think about it, because I reviewed Spider-Man: No Way Home, and let's see how this goes. Let's get into this movie, a show. I'll say it's a show on Disney Plus that you can watch on there. Let's get into it. We open in 2012 when the fight in New York against the alien Jatari, let's say, when a young Kate Bishop overhears Derek and Eleanor, played by Vera Farmiga, arguing about moving out of the apartment they live in. And while in the apartment, she sees the attack and notices Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, played by Jeremy Renner, jumping off a building like he did in the first Avengers movie as he saved her life from the Jatari, almost killing her. And her apartment is destroyed, and Derek is killed. And they have a funeral where Kate wants to protect her mother as she needs a bow and arrow, and she practices every day for years until present day, whenever that is. We see Kate as an adult and played by Haley Steinfeld, who portrays the character quite well as she shoots the arrow with the tennis ball at the clock and breaks it down and gets banned from school. And Eleanor comes off very unlikable, which reminds me of why was Vera Farmiga was in Godzilla versus not Godzilla versus Kong, but Godzilla King of the Monsters. And I'm asking, why is she in this to begin with? Maybe the paychecks, because she's just bad here. She's just as bad here as she was in Godzilla. It's Christmas time, and Clint brings his kids to the Avengers show, which is a musical, and he's reminded of what happened to his old friend Natasha Romanoff in Avengers Endgame, and the musical showing of the Avengers is a horrible idea, just horrible. Something tragic happening back in 2012, and they make a musical out of it, which doesn't make any sense. As Clint runs out for fresh air as he thinks the show is ridiculous, which is which it is, as the music sounds bad for Broadway. Kate visits her mother Eleanor with her now boyfriend Jack Duquesne. Forgive me if I said that wrong. Played by Tony Dalton, as he comes off like a slimy at first, but at the end of comes off like a weird character. As I get the impression Kate doesn't like Jack, which he does come off unlikable. Meanwhile, Clint has dinner with the kids, and the mother Laura, returned by Linda Cardellini, calls to check up on them while Kate, dressed up like a waitress at a party, and learns Eleanor and Jack are engaged. And I'm honestly not connecting with the characters, as the scenes are kind of relatable. If I found out my mother was engaged and didn't tell me anything, I would be pissed. Kate finds a stray dog outside the party building and overhears Eleanor and Armand chatting at. He threatens Eleanor, and Kate asks like a waitress while overhearing Orville and Jack at an auction, and snoops around and some more. And as I'm not connecting with Kate, but I feel like this isn't about Clint. It's more about Kate. And it feels more like her story of how she became Hawkeye with Clint. As this side character, which isn't the best thing for Hawkeye miniseries, after the Avengers series, I'll say, after the auction, Kate steals the Ronin sword and uniform that Hawkeye wore in Endgame and wears it as some robbers rob the auction, and she's kicking some robbers' ass. And this is getting a little too silly of a show. Kate escapes and sees the dog getting beat up by a robber, excuse me, and she saves the doggy's life. And Clint sees it on the TV on the news, and Kate takes the doggy to her apartment and gives him some food. And yes, Kate has her own apartment in New York like her mother does. Is that surprising? No, because it's almost typical. Kate gets captured by the robbers as she fights them, and Clint saves her life and reveal each other's identity. And this got me curious for the next episode, but the problem I'm having is that I'm not sure if I like the characters too much. Kate shows Clint where her apartment is as a hideout and asks her to take off the Ronin suit and to give it to him, as the robbers know who the Ronin is and come by her apartment, and they, with the dog, escape the apartment, which was on fire, and they get some supplies and go to a place where Kate and the dog can hide and stay at while Clint goes through the fire crime scene to grab the sword and uniform and sees they've been taken by the New York City LARPers, which is like a medieval times acting segment, which I'll see later in the show. And honestly, this show is getting a little lower as I'm waiting for the Black Widow after the credits connection, I'll say, to the show, and it'll take a couple of episodes to get there. But in the meantime, I'm getting rather impatient at this point. While Clint says goodbye to his kids and they go back to their mother, while Kate learns she's the bad vigilante, and they get moving while Kate has to go to work as she works at her mother's security business, and he takes her to work and goes up to their level and tries to talk with Eleanor, and she invites her to dinner at their place while Clint goes to the LARPers group to go get the suit and goes with the flow and finds the guy who has the suit, and they play a duel where Grills pretends to kill Clint, and he says it was a privilege to fight an Avenger, and calls up Laura while they're building gingerbread houses, which is one of the things Clint unfortunately had to break a promise for this plot, which is a bad dad to begin with. Kate, Eleanor, and Jack have dinner, and Kate advises to show off the sword fighting skills as she's telling him to stop letting her win, and gets rougher and rougher by trying to stab him in the face, and shows him and Eleanor for the liar he is. And this is one of the most hilarious, cringe-worthy scenes I've ever seen in this show. Clint is found by the bad guys while Kate calls him twice and finds a trace of where he's at and breaks into the place where they're trapped. They trap them both, and her break in as she breaks in was stupid, as I thought it was Black Widow's sister, but nope. We'll find out who she is in the next episode, and I'm getting rather angry at this. They won't tell us right away, as I know she's on the show on as IMDb. Is it fooling me at this point? We learned the origin story of the mute girl Maya Lopez, played by Alaqua Cox, starting with her in school back in 2007, as she loved her father and had a connection with him, and she learns to fight in karate class and a UFC class as has a prosthetic leg. And this actress, I don't think, has acted in anything. And as she sees her father got killed by the Ronin, that was Kate Bishop, and Maya wants vengeance while her group of men torture her, as well as Clint and the kids ride that are always bumpy. And Maya comes in and learns Clint is hard of hearing, and her assistant Kazi interprets for Maya and interrogates Clint and Kate as Clint manages to escape and the men look for him. And Maya kicks the hearing aid out of Clint's ear and breaks it as he breaks Kate out of tape. And they fight Maya and the bad guys, and the choreography wasn't that great. As they get out, Clint asks Kate to drive as she doesn't want her to or has no license. That wasn't very clear to me. And have a car chase, which felt very silly, like Ant-Man silly. Like the purple goo versus a giant arrow and a plunger arrow until they land on a subway, which is a silly car chase. Clint can't hear anything without his hearing aid as his family tries to call him, and Kate tries to help him communicate and can't make it in time for the Christmas movie marathon, which is the second thing he broke his promise to his kids. And this is heartbreaking, sure, but my problem is I'm not really caring for the characters like I said before, as it's becoming a real problem throughout the show. Kate tells the doctor she needs Clint's hearing aid fixed while eating at a restaurant, and they talk about the new uniforms as she makes the new uniforms purple as she refuses to wear it, or he refuses to wear it, or else Laura will divorce him. And Kate names the dog Pizza Dog, which sounds familiar. Like, didn't X-Men have a character like that? Yeah, in Apocalypse, as the writing is rather mediocre at best, but it's better than X-Men Apocalypse. Clint and Kate go to Eleanor's house to get some kind of security and hacks into Kazi's and tries to find Jack and gets logged out as Jack is home. This ending didn't feel like the appropriate way to end an episode, as there's no surprise. Jack learns Clint is Hawkeye, and they talk to Jack and Eleanor as she walks Clint out of the house, and she tells him not to involve her, and he agrees as he calls Loris, saying he can't make it, but he'll be there for Christmas, while Kate tries to talk to her mother about how much Jack is in the mob. In her belief, while Clint is lying on some ice bags with vegetables, until Kate comes to the place with Pizza Dog, where Clint is staying at, which is Kate's aunt's place, as she's gone for the winter, and celebrates Christmas together by wearing ugly Christmas sweaters, building gingerbread houses, and watching Christmas movies, and teaches her a trick with the coin and tells the story about how he met Natasha Romanoff, as she was the mission at the time, and how she became an Avenger, blah, 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 blah. And it has been told before, but surprisingly, I believe it being told here, despite the dialogue isn't working as well as it should. The next day comes, and Kate goes to the cops and to get the truck arrows, while Clint talks with Kazi to talk with Maya to not go after them, which is an interesting piece of dialogue. Clint and Kate work on a mission across the street and break into a place to get back a watch owned by the Avengers, and gets attacked by Maya, while Clint is attacked by Yelena Belova, returned by Florence Pugh from the Black Widow movie, as she was the sister with comic timing in that movie. And this was the thing I was most looking forward to since the Black Widow movie, and that cliffhanger was the best one in the series. Really, as she was the best thing about the Black Widow movie, and she's the best thing about the rest of the show, which is not very much, I'm not gonna lie. We open the next episode with Yelena fighting off against Anna to give her the antidote from the Black Widow movie, as she thought she was trapped under the bad guys' imprisonment, as she talks with them and goes in the bathroom, until the blip from Thanos, and wakes up 5 years later and wants to find Natasha and learns she's dead, which would lead up to the after credits scene from Black Widow, leading to this show, as she's just as good as she was in the Black Widow movie, but this time she's not as connectable. Kate goes back home, and Eleanor finds her wounded in the head and takes her to her room, and they talk about her as a superhero, and she asks Eleanor for a favor of checking their security systems. And this is when the show is getting good, in my opinion, as I have an episode left, and Yelena finds Kate and has a dinner with her and talk about why she wants to kill Clint, and to tell her to not get in her way again, as Clint comes to Skills' place to crash with Pizza Dog, and Jack gets arrested the next day while Clint takes off the hearing aid, trying to talk to Natasha, and tells her how sorry he is and he misses her, which is a scene that needs to be in the editing room floor. Kate calls Clint and leaves a bunch of messages, as Clint shoots a message to a truck and by her I'm talking about Maya's goons are driving, and meets Maya where the Ronin killed her father that very night, which was at a used car dealership, and beats her ass and tells her to not go after his family. While I'm not too thrilled with this action, nor any of the action thus far, Kate hires an Uber driver to drive them, and I'm getting a headache from all the silliness going in this show. Elena spies on Eleanor as she goes inside a building to meet someone, and sends Kate a message that Eleanor hired her with Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, returned by Vincent D'Onofrio from the Daredevil Netflix series. And like last time, with Matt Murdock being played by Charlie Cox, and now Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk as the Kingpin, and it makes me want to watch the Daredevil Netflix series again, because I own a couple of seasons on Blu-ray. The final episode begins with a meeting between Wilson and Eleanor, as Eleanor wants out of the business while Wilson wants her to think about what she's doing, and Kate is enraged by her mother working with the Kingpin, and Clint talks her down as he confesses she's his partner, while Maya meets with Wilson about also getting out of the mob business for her father's sakes, while Wilson is like Yelena, one of the best characters I can think of, despite I can't connect with them in this show, as Wilson is the most threatening character in the Daredevil Netflix series. And here, while Clint makes more arrows for Kate and himself with labels like Kate suggested earlier in the show, while Clinton asks Kate to get him in the fancy party, and the acting has improved since Yelena showed up, but the best performance, in my opinion, is Vincent D'Onofrio, as he's only in this final episode, and we get to that night, and Wilson plans on killing Eleanor while Clint and Kate arrive to the fancy party, and sees Jack is out of jail, and Clint gives Kate an earpiece, while Yelena shows up, and so does Eleanor, as Kate wants to talk with her about the Kingpin and a sniper that Kazi shoots at Clint but misses, and Grills and his team of butlers turn the party lights dark, while Kate follows Yelena to the elevator, and she eventually pushes all the buttons, which is super annoying, but Elf does it the best while they get off the elevator, and Grills and security tell people to evacuate, and Kate and Yelena try to reach Clint, but eventually Yelena reaches him and misses her opportunity, and Kate falls down, which was a silly fight between Kate and Yelena, was absolutely silly. While Kate realizes Jack is innocent and is sorry Eleanor got him in prison, which was kind of stupid, because it's a little hypocritical, I'm not going to lie. While Kazi fights Clint to finish him off, and Clint wins and jumps out of the window and lands in the Christmas tree and says hello to a bad-looking CGI owl, which looked pretty bad. And Maya decided to stop working for the Kingpin and Grills, and his backup gets everyone evacuated while Kate shoots the Christmas tree down and lands on this ice skating rink to get Clint safe, and they work together to shoot out 1,000 bad guys. And they do a lot of flips, and they beat their asses and shrink a truck and lets the owl take them away, which is Ant-Man humor. And not a very good sign on that one either for a Hawkeye show. And Kate hears Eleanor came out of the back door and goes after her as she catches up with her and fights the Kingpin and gets her ass handed to her until she does the trick Clint taught her as she blows him up, but not dead, and comes to Eleanor, and the cops come in to arrest Eleanor, while Yelena fights Clint as he tells her Natasha sacrificed herself to save the world, as she believes he's lying and still beats the crap out of him, particularly with a stick, and whistles a secret that Natasha and Yelena only know, and he tells her the truth about how much she loved her and always wanted her safe, as Yelena cries about it as she's sad, and Maya beats up on Kazi and says it was his life, not hers to begin with, and Maya stabs Kazi dead as he tells her to leave as the Kingpin is going after her, and she shoots the Kingpin while going back and forth with all of this. It did feel action-packed in its own way, as they saved the day, and Clint invites Kate and Pizza Dog, as she names it Lucky, to his family's Christmas dinner as their house, and the credits roll. And as the credits roll, during the credits, we get a song from the Avengers musical, as it was bad enough hearing it the first time. I didn't want a prolonged singing sequence from a play that should have never been existing to begin with. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this show a 4.8 out of 10. This is not as bad as Inhumans and Eternals, but unfortunately, I had some problems with it. And, I can't connect with the characters, as Yelena and the Kingpin are the best characters in the show. But unfortunately, I could watch Black Widow and the Daredevil Netflix series out of the show, as the mid-credit scene was not my favorite, as The Avengers is not meant for Broadway. The other characters are not making me enjoying this as much as I really wanted to, as this is a sad attempt to making a story about Hawkeye, and a young Hawkeye coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While this is a mild non recommendation, because this should have been a better, as the humor didn't work for me, as it felt like Ant Man humor, which was really unfortunate. And the action sequences are not quite clicking with me, which is a real shame. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Moon Knight. And until then, Avengers Assemble!